Well, hello, Miss Jess. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast.
Fierce Factor. Total disclosure, we have been, for everyone listening, we've just been talking offline. We forgot we were even about to record a podcast. I think we've been chatting for like 20 minutes. So anyway, now we're going official. So welcome. So where are you joining us from today?
I'm joining you from my office at Vantis Institute right here in Newport Beach.
Nice. Well, we're so excited to have you. I've been looking forward to this podcast. Obviously, we chatted a little bit beforehand just to kind of frame up what we were going to deliver from a content standpoint. And I have so enjoyed how this, conversation really took us a little bit off track, but I think our listeners are really going to appreciate some of the stuff that we're going to dig into today. But before we really get into the nuts and bolts, I want to, I already kind of gave a bio about you, and I want to hear from your perspective a little bit more about who you are. Tell us about what you do, kind of set the stage for today.
Okay, perfect. Well, I am the co-founder of Vantis Institute in Newport Beach. We specialize in non-surgical hair restoration and paramedical pigmentation. So basically, I got my start in plastic surgery doing scar camouflage, which is medical tattooing. So I did that for about 10 years, in addition to being a surgical tech there, which taught me a lot. And then I wanted to kind of branch out. So I was looking into other forms of using my pigmentation skills. So I went to England. I wanted to train with the guy who invented SMP, just because I know the hair loss industry is a huge market that I wanted to tap in.
So explain what SMP is for us, break it down.
Oh yeah, okay. So scalp micro-pigmentation, SMP, is basically a pigmentation, so a form of a tattoo that you can apply to the head, and it is targeted towards bald people. So when you've lost all your hair, it gives the appearance of a 5 o'clock shadow. So what I was hoping to do with that is, I know a lot of people have hair transplant surgeries and stuff here, is to apply that towards people with hair loss, not necessarily bald heads. It's not a very common look, at least in Orange County. So I wanted to train with the best, and then see what I could take back here. But we ran into some challenges with that because obviously the procedure is meant for bald people. And so when I did try to apply it, and actually rewinding a little bit, there were certain things I didn't agree with, with the training, because that's one of the benefits I think of having a medical background, is understanding anatomy a little bit more, and also just what people want. But they basically take black ink and they dilute it on a grayscale to make it look like a shadow effect. So because of my experience with like all neutral skin tone pigments, I wanted to actually do color matching to the hair, because I'm really familiar with doing modifiers and how pigment pulls under the dermis. So I wanted to take that technique, but with my pigment knowledge, and apply it to people with hair and make it look like people had a full head of hair without having to shave their head. So, ran into some challenges with it not taking at first. The pigment was fading really fast. I couldn't understand why. But I knew I was on to something good. So basically what we did is we partnered basically with some experts in their own field. I knew this was, I needed to seek expert help with it. And so we partnered with, or we have him on our board of advisors, Dr. Carson Bruns. Really smart guy. He's PhD in nanotechnology. He's on the research lab for Colorado University. And they study pigments, inks, and tattooing, and how it could be applied in a medical way. So he's invented a lot of really cool stuff about pigments that detect UV exposure. They're working on stuff for sugar levels for diabetics. I mean, it's just crazy, his knowledge and things. Yeah, so, I believe in collaborating with people who are experts in their own fields to advise you on stuff. So once we started bringing on more experts to kind of collaborate with the idea that I had, we were able to counteract the fading. What we had actually determined is that bald heads, this is why SMP does not work on people with hair, even though a lot of people attempt it. Bald heads don't have the same vascularity as people with hair follicles do. And so there's an immune response that happens with pigment where it literally eats the pigment up. Because it's trying to prevent infection. So we had to counteract that. And we actually came out with a protocol and developing a pigment that wasn't prone to those same things. So we've been able to beat all the things that, the hurdles that we came to. And now we're doing a procedure called VFR. So it's Vantis follicle replication, and we are creating the appearance of new hair growth on the scalp. So whether it's like receding hairline, crown, you know, any type of hair thinning, we basically make it look like you have a full head of hair. You know, and
I love you're so passionate.
Yeah.
Following in your brain, your journey. You're like, we did this and brought this person in and did this and did that. So like for someone like me who's just kind of you know, lame when it comes to the clinical stuff, I'm just all about the outcome, you know. I always have thought, and certainly obviously I have experience working in the, you know, the aesthetic space, so I have grasp over different modalities or techniques or things for hair regrowth. But like what you essentially have sought out to do, one, you know, coming from your tattoo camouflage background, which just to kind of backtrack and fill people in, you came from working and really building that concept or that model with a very sophisticated plastic surgery practice in Newport Beach, right? So you took that experience that you had there and you were like, I want to take this to the next level and basically take this whole SMP model that you studied in England and brought it back, and you've now created like the modern day toupee, like, you know, right?
Yes.
Am I on the right track here?
You know, you're totally right on. I mean, being in the aesthetics, you've probably heard this, that the non-invasive things are completely taking over the surgical market. You know, people don't have time for surgery anymore. And so when there's a need for something, that's why I think I was so just bent on, I had to figure out a way to do this. Cause, you know, I knew people, you know, 85% of men are going to have some sort of hair thinning. It's a huge number, you know, of people who have this. So there's a need for it. And if they don't want surgery, the other options, you know, are stuff like, you know, the PRPs and all that stuff. It's good, but it's not a visible result immediately, you know? So it's finding that in between a hair transplant, which is obviously a dramatic result, but it's a lot of recovery, versus these kind of therapeutic things that maybe not have a visual result right away. So I wanted to give a non-invasive option for people who want a result, don't want downtime, don't have time for recovery, you know, and then just kind of want to go on with their life.
Well, and which is like the sweet spot for everything, you know, and the way that we do business, we think, we operate today, right? As human beings, we want convenience, we want a result, and we want really great, luxurious outcomes at an affordable price. Let's just face it, and we can get it, right?
Yep.
So, so it's interesting because you mentioned that you were really responding to a high demand that you were seeing around like hair, I don't know if you call it like male baldness or hair loss in men, right? And then I have to really like also expose this because I didn't realize, I figured like if you're a bald guy, you're probably insecure looking in the mirror, maybe. Although I think some bald guys are quite sexy. It doesn't bother me a lot, you know, but I get it. But right when we started working together, I brought in a friend of mine who she woke up literally one morning and she had lost, I mean, a chunk of hair, like around the back of her. She just went to like wash her hair and felt, I don't even know how to describe, like the size of a small brick almost, like across the back of her head. And all of a sudden I was like, okay, what can women do about this issue, you know? And of course you came to the rescue, but talk to me too about like, you know, this novel concept and how it's really is universal for men and women.
It is. And actually women are a little bit different too, because, you know, there's obviously the male pattern baldness, which for men is going to attack the top of their head. They have good hair still on the side. So they're candidates for hair transplants and stuff, you know. With women, it's a lot different because a lot of times women are getting global thinning, you know, and they're not the best candidates for surgery because they don't have good donor hair. You know, it's all over. Their hair is starting to fall out, thin, and there is a psychological component for women, even though I know it's there for men too. Men don't want to lose their hair, but hair helps. It's one of those things that define your femininity. So it really messes with women, whether it's like their dating life, self-confidence, when they do start losing their hair. And unfortunately, it's the lack of options that they have, because women, you know, that's the big difference with men and women. Women are all about enhancement and maintaining, they're on top of the market. And so when there isn't an option for them, it's very frustrating, you know? So I do women. I do a little bit larger procedure because it's more coverage for them. But it's been, I mean, life-changing. I don't know if you saw the photos I recently posted of the girl, but I mean, she had a alopecia all over her head. I mean, it was really sad. And she said it's been affecting her for a while. She had clients like trying to give her advice, and she's young, you know, she's, I think, like in late 20s, early 30s at most, you know, so hearing her whole story, and, you know, she ended up actually coming out and talking about it on her own social media, which I was surprised to see, just because she said it was a very vulnerable thing for her to actually confront.
Well, I think that's a testament to the impact that you made on her, to your point, you know, her psychological outcomes. And, you know, so I want to talk about, because I do follow all of your photos because I'm obsessed with, you know, your results, number one, are so impressive, and just what you do. And it's so relevant for all of us as people, and just thinking about this kind of stuff. But, you know, something that we've talked about, and, you know, we have Tavania, who really runs the back end of your business in our leadership academy. And so a lot of what we do together is like on the back end of the business. And I don't get to see the output. For me is so fun when I get to see like what actually happens, you know, like putting cash in the bank and then it comes out. But let's talk about this, because something that you have really made a core principle behind the way that you represent your business is to be authentic to who you are, and to really market yourself to attract the clients who are going to appreciate really the technical skill you have, but the personality, the swagger, kind of just like the vibe that they're going to get when they come in. And a lot of what you post and what is out there in your marketing, on your wall, your artwork, you know, could, in, you know, I would say very conservative community in Newport Beach, be perceived as a bit risque, right? I mean, it's very edgy. And so I want to talk to you because, one, it takes a lot of guts to market, you know, in a different way, but also, two, it's so clearly set you apart from your competition, and really you guys are just in a category of one in your market. So that was a lot of commentary. So I guess my question is, you know, tell me a little bit about what it takes to stand out in a saturated market like Newport Beach, and how has this differentiated marketing contributed to that?
Yeah, I actually like that question, because that is so true. And I see everybody falling into the same thing, you know, that if you're going to be in a certain market, then you kind of mirror what everyone else is doing, and you're never going to get ahead that way. You know, you're just always going to be spinning your wheels. And so, you know, one thing I will say I was really blessed with is, you know, when you do work in plastic surgery, there's this community there that, you know, like I think with doctors, I mean, they spent so long in school, they have all this, you know, pride with them. And so when social media took over, you know, a lot of the stuff that people social media for doctors, there's this like borderline of being unethical by posting certain stuff, you know, because you really want to protect patient privacy. And then, but social media wants to see everything. I mean, they want everything in the open, you know, it's hard for people to cross over that. And I think we kind of saw that. It was, you know, even from start, when I first got hired in plastic surgery to the very end, how much we evolved, you know, because we started accommodating to what our people wanted to see. And, you know, and that goes even with like what you're saying, you want to attract the person that you want to work with, because, you know, in the beginning, I think when I first started working there, was like, you know, get everyone in, whoever you can get in, and, you know, go that route. But then you also can deal with unsatisfied people. And so we actually started vetting people more, you know, and looking at it like mutual interviews. When you actually see someone, like they are interviewing you, but you're also going to interview them, because they're your reputation. You know, if they're happy, if they're going to be going and telling everyone, reputation is huge. You can have a huge volume and have an awful reputation, and it's not worth you spinning your wheels over the volume, you know. So what we did is, we really, when we started doing our business plan, we said, who is our archetype? You know, what type of person is going to get this? You know, they obviously are going to care about their appearance. They're probably optimizing themselves in any way, whether it's health, physical, So we defined our archetype. Now we've changed that a few times, by just doing internal studies. We ask our patients a lot of stuff like, what podcasts do you listen to? What do you do for hobbies? What do we do this? So we've actually compiled our own data on the side of who our archetype is. And that's how we've done our marketing, so we didn't want to be generic, because if you think about it, you go to a hotel that's really nice, and it's really nice, but it's not memorable. Then you go to Palm Springs and all those little cute boutique hotels, or Vegas, and when somebody has a very defined style, it's memorable and it does leave more of an impression on you as far as referring. So we have a style. We like 70s. We have, we want our archetype. We want someone who's laid back, that's fun. We're with them for a long time when I'm doing the procedure. I want someone who is able to talk, have a conversation, that I actually enjoy doing what I'm doing on them, not that's, so uptight. So I think it should be, you do your marketing based off of who you want to attract, and I think the data that you compile, and that's why it's important to have
it from the source.
But
I think it's tough, for your average business, let's just say, get out of any even aesthetics, right? I think it's difficult because in the beginning, especially, you don't want to polarize. You're scared, like, okay, if I just niche down and only communicate to this specific type of client, then, it's going to be so hard to find them. And it's really the opposite. It's really like rather than casting this huge net in the sea, right? You've got like the right fishing pole and the right bait and the right, approach to attract that specific type of fish that you want to catch.
Yeah, and we did that even with our ads. We put out several different ads, and we saw which ones actually got responded on more. And then we've started just defining it. So when it comes to marketing strategy, I think, it's good to have an idea of who you want, but you also have to be flexible in changing it. But we also did know too that, when we talked about our artwork, we do have some, like, I had Led Zeppelin behind me right now, but we have some really awesome artwork all throughout the office. And at first we talked about it being a little risque or the stuff, but then we're like, the type of person who'd be offended by that is probably also not the type of person that I want to work with.
Right.
And
it's some uptight, stick up their butt, like.
Right. And those people, and it's not even to say it in a rude way, but those people are more likely to complain. They're more likely to be unhappy with certain stuff. Like, they're more likely to write you a bad review. So that's all going to end up backlashing on your business. And again, you want to stand out. So if it means being a little bit on the edge, then the only way you're going to have an advantage over competitors is to be different. If you're just trying to blend in, you're never going to get ahead.
Yeah. And I'll include, obviously, if this YouTube video for anybody who wants to watch this, but also the link to your Instagram. So like, if you're listening to this podcast, you can go in and check out kind of what we're talking about. But so I thank you for that, because we happen to have a lot of clients, and we just communicate with people, really not just in Newport Beach, but all over the world. And sometimes someone will call me and say, Kaylee, but you don't understand, I'm in this really like densely competitive metro, and the people here, they like, it's the housewives. And I'm like, wait a minute, let's talk to, someone in Newport Beach who really gets it. So I think you guys have done a phenomenal job. But I will say, as you were mentioning, your experience, the hurdles that you overcame, just trying to figure out your really like the clinical formula, right? For the result you wanted. You were mentioning, how you really sought out experts, and you were looking for, it was about who are the people that are going to bring really an elevated conversation, asking different kinds of questions, different experience, expertise, right? And something that you have done in your team, you as a business as well, Jess, have done exceptionally well, that, as I know through my experience working with you guys, is that you really do have this philosophy and that theme of, I'm not the smartest person in the room. I'm not trying to be the smartest person in the room, but I'm trying to sit around a room with, you're the best at what you do. You're the best at what you do, right? And so that has really translated into the team of people that you have. You have clearly, made that an important mission through this process. So talk to me about, as we were kind of pre-chatting, you just mentioned how, you do the team test, right? Like when you're looking to bring on new people, I simply ask, hey, well, like, how do you know that that's going to be a great fit for your business? So we talked about, the personality of the business, and when you have that well-defined, that helps. But talk to me about, how you use that team test as a diagnostic for hiring new employees.
Yes, and I think every company should do this. I cannot stress this enough because I've been an employee too before I was, the owner of this company. And there's nothing worse, even if somebody's hired and they're a great skill set, but they don't work well with the team. And once you have individuals, the whole office cannot actually thrive. So I'm a huge fan of this. I do this at my office, that basically once I find, my top 5 candidates for a company, and even before skill, I actually look at work ethic and passion for stuff, because I think skill can always be taught. Those are 2 things, but I've also seen it, vice versa, where you have someone that's so talented, so smart, and they're, showing up late, or they're calling out sick, or they're not that into what you're selling. And so that skill is useless, so those, I always look for those 2 things. And then once I find someone that I just think is an amazing person, I think you also have to step back and realize I'm not going to be always working with them, but my team is, and I need to make sure that they can also work together in their expertise, because that is, I don't really believe in micromanaging. I believe in really making sure that you hire the right person for the job, and then every week we collaborate together and we create a product together based off of all our individual findings. So once I find, our top 3 people, we have a full staff interview with just the girls in the office. And then if they approve of the person, and we have a discussion after of what they thought, any red flags they saw, because everyone's going to have a different feel for the person. They ask different questions. We try to make it as relaxed for the person interviewing as possible too, so it doesn't seem like an interrogation, but usually we'll have coffee and just kind of chat what they think, and just to get more of a vibe from them. And then so that's second interview. And then third interview, then I have a meet with my business partners and also make sure that they think it's a good fit for the company. And at the end of that, then we all collaborate and decide together on a hire, pros and cons for everyone.
Right. I think that this is such an obvious thing for someone like you, who clearly you're like, I know that it doesn't matter. This could be the most incredible person to me, but if someone on my team isn't going to get along with them, or they're not going to be able to collaborate or contribute, I'm not going to be able to. You're only as strong as like your weakest link, And so I think hiring for passion is that's an invaluable quote unquote skill, that I feel passionate and I'm going to do the work. Like, when you're not there and you turn your back, right? You believe that person's going to be already committed, excited, willing to kind of figure it out on their own because they're passionate about the cause for the business. Your vision.
Yeah. And I tell every person I hire too, I'll give their job requirements, but I also say it doesn't end there. And I also say the one thing that we do not ever say at this company is that's not my job. I don't care if it's janitorial stuff. I don't care what it is, but each person's going to have your priorities. And when your priorities are done, you're going to check with anyone else around the team to see if they need help with theirs, before you leave. So everyone, and that's why they should agree on the team member, because if you don't respect each other or have that mutual respect, then you can't lean on each other. Because what if one person calls out? I need the other girls to come in and team together and fill that person's job until she comes back, and so it has to all go that way. So why more people aren't doing, team interviewing or hiring, I'll never understand it, because those are the people who work with them, not the manager, the person actually doing the hiring.
Exactly. Well, and I think probably I don't want to get off on a tangent on this, but a lot of times hiring too late rather than building a real plan and having the foresight that, look, in 3 months, we're going to need this. So we're going to start the process, right? And not having to just hurry up and fire to shoehorn somebody into a role because they have a gap in their business. So part of it's really planning, quite honestly.
Right.
So, okay. So we just totally brushed over this, but there are a lot of budding entrepreneurs, a lot of career people, industry reps, nurses, or even practitioners who are like in, want to open a private practice, who follow and listen to this podcast in different capacities. And one thing that is so appealing to me about having a conversation with someone like you is that you were really in those shoes. You had a very successful career with a leading plastic surgeon. You were making, a ton of money. You were comfortable, but you had this little burning desire inside that you knew you were meant for more. You knew that there was opportunity for you to serve people in this special way, right? And this gap in the market. And so for us on the outside, we're like, well, duh, you're so smart. And, you're obviously such a go-getter, like you can do it. But when it's us, it's not that easy to make that move. There's a lot of uncertainty. It's scary, so I want to really kind of tap into that piece of you and that kind of time period, what it took for you to make the decision to start your own business. And how would you inspire, motivate, or what kind of advice would you give to someone who is considering leaving a comfortable position, or uncomfortable even, a position where they're going to go out on their own and really have to go face the unknown or the uncertain?
Yeah, it was a big decision for me. And also, of course you have people around you telling you you're crazy if you're going to leave. Stability, and especially if you're getting paid well. If there's nothing wrong with your situation and you're doing okay, and you're happy there, it is a very challenging thing to stop it. Usually, if you're unhappy is when you're going to take the risk. But when there's risk involved, there was a lot of benefits to risk weighing out. And I think ultimately what made me make a decision, because of course, I think every single person on this planet fantasizes about owning their own business because you have freedom and you can do what you want and, financial freedom. But, a lot of businesses fail. And I think that's always what stops people is fear. And so, of course, I had the same fears everyone had. I ended up weighing out my options, of kind of going back and forth of what I should do when I was thinking about this. And ultimately what I had decided is, I was comfortable, I was getting paid well, I was getting pretty nice annual raises where I was, and I kind of did like a 5-year, 10-year, 15 and 20-year plan. And what I came to the conclusion is, eventually, and I worked for a doctor, so it wasn't a corporation at the time, eventually that doctor is going to retire. So my 5-year plan looked good, my 10-year plan looked good. And then after that was uncertain. And so, I think looking at the future, and that's the scary thing, is I think it's so much easier to just kind of look at what's good for you right now. And then I started thinking, okay, well, after the 10-year plan, I'm going to be older, and it's a lot harder to do career changes later in life than it is now, and so if I was going to take a leap, it might as well be now. And I think every successful entrepreneur says that very few people at least took leaps without fear of failure. I think it's how you interpret fear of failure, of just being, like, I am going to fail. There's going to be things that I'm going to fail at. And it's how you use those failures to get ahead, just be like, okay, take it. And now how do I learn from this and move forward? You have to have the drive to keep on going. And we've taken it, obviously we have a 1-year plan, a 5-year plan, for the company, but we also do a 1-day and a 1-week plan. And I think that's super helpful, especially with COVID, everything happening, is you need to be able to reset, those short-term goals. Because if you're so focusing on the long-term goal, any little stumble, failure that comes your way, it's going to be very discouraging. And we haven't let that happen. And, I think it's been super beneficial, because I'm thankful to say we're still open and thriving. And even during this whole lockdown, we've actually used it to benefit, in marketing strategies and ways to reset for those 1- and 5-year plans. So take the risk, before you're too old and have regrets. It's worthwhile. You always want to be going towards what you ultimately want in life, and don't leave it as a fantasy. But it's how you accept failure. Some people get really hard on themselves, and I think we just take a failure and try to turn it into a positive, and we've been great with that.
Right. my son this morning, he was outside skateboarding and he came in, he said, Mom, I did an ollie. And I'm like, oh, awesome job. And he said, well, I oofed like 10 times. And I said, well, if you aren't, that's like, wait, that's his word for like, ate it, you know? And I said, well, if you ain't oofing, you ain't skating, or, you know, whatever. And he said, you know what? And he's 8. And he's like, no, that's part of it, Mom. The oofing is like part of like, you're just going to completely like destroy your body. It's just part of learning to skate. Like you expect to oof. And I was thinking about that. And that was such, you know, the parallels for life, you know, what we could consider failures, right? In our business and our life and the decisions we make. But what stands out to me about what you said is that you felt the fear, but you used it as fuel. You used it as this pain that I'm feeling, this uncertainty, this scariness that I feel. And definitely, you know, there's fear, but I'm not going to let that stop me. I'm just going to feel it and I'm going to freaking go. Right?
Yeah. And if you decide to go, you have to go. You can't, you know, it's like the people you see trying to make a backflip and then they second guess it, and you see in their head, they second guess it last minute and now they're back flopping on the water, you know? So that is like, even with the skateboard, that applies to life. If you're going to make the decision to do it, go. Like, do not doubt yourself, because even if you get a failure, you just have to know in advance, you're going to fail and you're going to keep on going. And I think if you have that mentality, there's no way you're not going to get ahead. Yeah. You know, the only thing that's going to determine getting ahead is just the time frame it takes to get there, but you'll eventually get there.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for that, Jess. So, so tell me, what about, I just want, you know, to kind of like sum you up, you know, I don't know how, I know you're young. I don't know how old you are, but I do love that. I agree with you. I think when you're younger, you have less to lose, right? There's less, you know, responsibility, but I also think it is harder to have that confidence and faith in yourself when you're younger. You know, I've found that I'm not 100, but I found that like, as I've aged, I've just become more comfortable in my own skin. I've cared less about what other people think, and I've become more confident in making decisions. But I'm interested in hearing, you know, what is the best compliment that you've ever received?
I wouldn't know what the best compliment is, but I will say one thing that almost kind of makes me a little bit happy, that I don't even know if it's a compliment, is, you know, with everything currently going on, I've had a couple of my friends who own businesses and like, I can't believe you guys have survived and are still like thriving forward. And I think that's kind of, you know, and it's a weird thing to say because I know so many people are failing who have been open for 10 years. You know, it's a really sad time we're in right now. And I think that's where I was saying with how you take failures, if you can try to capitalize on it and don't just let life happen to you, if you just keep on pushing forward. I think I like that also because this particular person who said it to me was also the person who said I was crazy for leaving my other job. You know, so it was almost like
feel good that told you so. You're like, eh.
So I think that's kind of, it was like that, like I'm doing something right, you know, and I'm surprising people. And I think that's kind of where you want to be, is even if people doubt you, I think that's the best thing, is to show anybody who doubted your vision, you know, that nothing's going to stop you. And I mean, so it was a weird thing to say as a compliment, but it made me happy.
It's a huge compliment, and it would make me happy too. And I agree. I'm the same way. You know, when somebody puts, I mean, you know, nobody like intends to put you down, but when someone sort of questions me or, you know, puts me in that position where I have to prove to them, that's like, it's like unleashing me on a different level. It's like, shouldn't have done that.
I know.
You shouldn't have done that. Watch out, right? So what's next for you? What do you know, I know I see these wheels turning, like you're not, it's like, okay, cool. And, you know, you've got the business momentum going. You guys have good traction. It's early still, but like, what's next for Jess?
Yeah, we actually have a lot of stuff in the works right now. So, we're currently looking to expand the board of advisors. So we're looking for, like a top dermatologist, you know, for, some stuff that we have in the works, you know, that I can't talk too much on, but we did file right before COVID happened. We actually got to file for a worldwide patent on something that will be coming out within the year. So that will be really exciting when we can release that. And then we also took this time, you know, during shutdowns, we basically, as I said, we had a reset, obviously, because we weren't physically able to do stuff. So we spent this whole time with marketing strategy on kind of where we're going to go, if we're going to open more practices up, which initially was the plan. And I think what we have started actually dabbling into is a training academy for the scar camouflage, for the hair, for really everything, to kind of just get them out there more, because 70% of our clients are actually flying out of state to come get the procedure. So there's a need in other states. And so we've actually already had people inquire about doing training once we're able to gather. So we're able to get together a full training manual, full training videos, an online course. We have everything set for fly-in program. So we locked that down. So that will be something that we'll be able to do once everything is up and running again. But we've got to actually, having to slow down was really nice, because we got to reorg, you know, the whole company and where we're going and stuff. So it's very exciting. But yeah, expanding our board, getting the academy going, and then the patent we filed is going to be something very, very exciting.
Awesome. Well, I'm really proud of what you have done, especially during this downtime, you know, where you could have just stuck your head in the sand and waited it out, but you guys didn't. So, all right. So signature question on the podcast. What does the fierce factor mean to you?
The fierce factor, I think it's more of the person, you know, it's everyone, I think, that's going to be within your circle and has that fierceness. I think is the drive, you know. It's like you said, when someone almost like a backhanded, not put you down, but challenges you in a certain way, you know, it's the fierce factor is the drive to innovate and move forward and be successful. And I think it's actually a personality. It's your work ethic, you know. It's, and hopefully, you know, we can spread that to more people. Because I mean, Orange County is one of the best places, I think, for California. It's LA. It's the success of LA without the ego, you know. So there's so much opportunity here in Orange County, and I'm very thankful that we started here.
Yes. Oh, you guys will do fantastic. And I couldn't agree more. I think it's totally within you, right? Whatever, anything starts from within. The answers are there. All right, Jess, any final thoughts for our listeners? And also, if they want to learn more about working with you, you know, how can they find you?
Yeah, so, well, thank you so much for having me on the podcast too. If they want to find us, we do have vantisinstitute.com, and then I have two separate Instagrams. So Vantis Institute is for the hair restoration, and then all my scars I do on Voslo, VOSLO_, and that is more for the scar camouflage, more like the aesthetic medical side. They can contact me or view photos on there if they have any questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time today and for the inspiration. I know that our listeners are probably, I took a whole page and a half of notes myself. So I guarantee that there's so many pearls to take away. So I'm excited. Congratulations on all the success.
Awesome. Well, thank you. And I hope you have a wonderful week. Bye.